Hey everybody, it is Taylor of Summerdale Soul here. Thank you so much for joining me again. Today I'm working on mounting my e-brake and my gas tank. Here you can see where those cables are going to be fed for that e-brake. And here you can see where I've added the finest spray paint flare. I'll start by grabbing the T-shaped end of the line and looping this into the little hook on the caliper. For reference, this is my rear right brake caliper. Once you wrangle that into place, give it a nice turn so it sits super snug into its little nook. With the top in place, I was able to loosen the nuts and slide that into that C-bracket. Once in place, I tighten the nuts. You definitely don't want these going anywhere. With those two things in place, I was able to slide into the car after a very important spider sweep and feed the line through the transmission tunnel. That flappy part I pointed out is something that will allow me to mount this to either the subframe or inside that transmission tunnel. I'll likely go on the subframe if memory serves me correctly, but for now I'm just trying to feed this through that transmission tunnel. I wish I could say I had a ghost helper on hand, but I just wanted to show what this looked like coming through. By giving myself a little more slack and pushing it down, it was a lot easier to feed that cable through that hole. A little assistance from around and underneath actually helped out a lot too. Of all the parts I held on to, somehow I had this little brake wedge in here. I'm glad I did, ended up spraying this gold to match, and that's going to hold that in place. I repeated the same process on the other side, just clearly in far worse lighting conditions. I started with that T-shape going into that little nook, and then slid the loosened nuts into that C-bracket once more. With those tightened up, I was ready to move back under the car. Having learned my dusty lesson the first time, I've got my fashion safety glasses on. At this point, while I'm under the car, I'm just going to let y'all sit with what I can only call my stream of consciousness.
Oh no! That's deeply upsetting.
Remember that spider sweep I said I did earlier?
That is straight up next to the drivetrain. I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe, let's see. That's going to touch. That's a no good. And it's also full of spiders! Let's go above. There's a little bit of pressure on this. Alright, so right now I'm feeding this under. Oh, it's touching me! Oh. I can't even look. I can't even look. I can't even look. Right now I'm feeding this under my brake lines, because those are like a need. As I was saying, these are like a want. I think that's actually the route I want to take.
Finally out of the spider dungeon, I can see the result of all the struggle. So as you can see here, my e-brake is completely disassembled, so I had to reinstall this, wrap that around that curvature. I unfortunately lost the super long nut that goes with this, of course, but I found one that does the trick for now, and it worked. Before I start mocking up where I want to see this e-brake go, I need to connect it to those cables that I've installed. This will allow me to see how long that cable is and if I need to make any adjustments. Thankfully it's pretty easy. Give it a twist and slide that cord into place. The second one can be a little stubborn. Start mocking up exactly where I want to see that e-brake go. You can see I've got a lot of slack here, and this is in the uncranked position, so that's not going to work. I removed the stand-in nut and slid this up so I could get it as tight as I possibly could. You'll want to hold it in place as best you can so you can get a little bit of tension on that line without it sliding out of place. Once that's screwed in tight, you're ready to roll. It's time to mock it up. My goal here was to get it pretty far forward in a position that I liked where the handle was, but also with some tension on the line. With all of those factors in mind, I felt good about marking the drilling locations. Very good. Time to get after it. So these were old bolts that I had laying around to kind of mock this up for position in this video. What I eventually did was drill the holes out to M8 size, so they're nice and beefy. Ended up going to Ace Hardware and got some nice gold matching M8 nuts and bolts. But for the purpose of a video, these will have to do. It sounds successful, but what's the verdict on the lines? They look tight here. Status on the calipers? Success! I'll need to see how it holds weight, but for now, I'm happy with this. Alright, onto the gas tank. I've got my parts on screen here. Just want to say thanks to Matt from the Exocet community. I'm using his setup. I think eventually I'll have to make sure the gas tank is 2 inches higher in the rear than in the front, but for now I just kind of want to lift this up so I can fit it above the subframe in the rear. Oh no, did you give me the wrong one? Ugh! Come on, dude. With 3 out of the 4 placed on the best educated guess location, I'm ready to place the tank on. And shocker, I was wrong. And the tank is of no help to me either. I had to delicately balance the tank here while also removing this bolt on the right so I could scoot it a little to the left on that second bolt location. It's a delicate and infuriating process. With those teetering ever so delicately, I realized I took this little mat off here, so I added this back for a little bit more weight spread. With these teetering delicately, I add that metal plate and flipped it upside down because it gives a little more height in the rear. Unfortunately, with this setup, I'm likely only going to be able to get half a tank of gas in here because the fuel pickup is a little forward and I think it has some lean in the Miata originally. So I'm flipping this upside down to get any extra lift I can in the rear. It's not going to help much, but it's something. I repeated on the same side because I, of course, messed up twice. And wrapped this side up with a washer under the tank, a washer above the tank, and then the bolt. Here you can see that little bit of lift I'm getting from that plate that I mentioned earlier. A lot of people reinforce the plate that these bolts go into, but for now I'm just trying to get this thing fired up. So in my current fuel line setup, I have the fuel pressure regulator side as the return, and the front line as the pressurized. Can't guarantee if that's accurate, so I might be in the splash zone when I try to start this car. As always, thank you so much for watching and following along. It means the world, and I can't wait to catch you next time.